Hey, I'm Mark Lamont Hill, and you're watching HuffPost Live. When some high schools returned from holiday break, they were greeted with free condoms. That's right, 1/3 of Philadelphia's high schools will now be home to new, clear, plastic condom dispensers. That's new and clear, not nuclear. Installed inside the nurse's office. The new move aims to increase access to students in a city where teens comprise 25% of new HIV infections. Finally, the district has addressed public health in a way that is modern, that's realistic, and that is proactive. Joining us to discuss this further and probably tell me why I'm wrong in our Google Hangout is Chad Hills. He's an issue analyst at Citizen Link. We're also joined by Mona David. She's the president of the New York City Parents Union. We're also joined by Patrick Smith, who is the manager of community education at Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania. And joining me by phone is Joni Hudson Reynolds. Now, Joni Hudson Reynolds is awesome because not only is she a blogger for Ebony Mom Politics, but she also responded to our notice that we were having a segment. She said she wanted to join the segment, and instead of just leaving a comment, she's actually agreed to come on into the segment with us, and we encourage all of you to do the same. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, hi.
All right, Chad. You're against schools doing it condom style.
Well, as you expected, we'll have to agree to disagree with you, probably, Mark. But when schools implement policies or such things as this, I mean, they're making a value and a moral statement. And basically, from our perspective, they're saying we expect you to have sex, and we're going to enable this. And we would say, what are schools doing undermining parents like that? Only parents can give kids their family beliefs, impart their religious beliefs on this, and help their children decide what is appropriate for them sexually. And I think when you turn schools into truck stops, that's a pretty huge concern, and we're very, very much against enabling students to have access to these, and just the message that the school is giving to these students, saying, "Look, we know you can't control yourself, so take action and use these condoms." Instead of saying, we expect a lot better of you. We know you can control yourself. And you know what? I think that sexual activity should be preserved for marriage. And you're going to really sideline your future here if you continue to be sexually active.
Patrick.
Yes, John.
I'm Mark.
I'm here.
Yeah, Patrick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no worries, Patrick. Talk to me about your stance on this. Chad says this sends the wrong message. It enables bad behavior. It suggests that young people can't control themselves. And instead of providing a message of abstinence until marriage, it sends a message of we support you having sex at a young age.
In fact, Mark, studies have shown that access to condoms does not encourage students to become more sexually active earlier at all. And in fact, access to condoms helps to delay, or a comprehensive sexuality approach helps to delay many teens or adolescents from becoming sexually active too early.
I'm not sure that's true, that last point, but you raise. I don't think the data suggests that having access to condoms makes you less likely to have sex.
Well, coupled with comprehensive sexuality education, of course. So
right, that's actually what delays it. What I'm saying is,
yes.
I just don't want us to put bad statistics out there. The numbers suggest that comprehensive sexual education makes people less likely to have sex at an early age. It just so happens that condoms are part of that training, but
condoms should be.
Perhaps. I'm just saying, if you took the condoms out, you'd still have the same result. So this doesn't hinge on condoms. But Mona, I wanted to bring you into the conversation.
Hi.
Hey, Mona, what do you say to this?
Well, it bothers me. Again, it seems like a Department of Education or school district is circumventing the rights of the parents to parent their child. The fact that, again, it's another opt-out This is something where parents need to opt in. And if there isn't comprehensive sexual education offered with these condoms, as far as I'm concerned, it's just going to promote promiscuous behavior.
Mona, help me understand this. You say opt in, so in your world, no student will be able to have access to condoms unless a parent were to write in and say, my kid can get condoms.
Yes, the parents must opt in. Doing anything else is circumventing our rights. This opt out. How do we know that parents were notified in the first place?
But if a kid wants condoms and the parent doesn't want them to have condoms, do you think that not allowing them to have condoms in school will stop the behavior they're worried about?
No, but it still talks to circumventing the authority of parents, and that's what bothers me. And as long as they're going to offer comprehensive sexual education with this, along with the condoms, then okay. But if it's just condoms for kids to get, then it's not okay.
So you'd be okay if they offered comprehensive sexual education and that included condoms? She has to take a call. It's probably her condom guy. Anyway, we have on the phone Chad.
Yes.
I'm sorry, excuse me, not Chad, Joni, excuse me. Joni, you wanted to weigh in on this. You're against the measure as well. Are you similar to Chad in the fact that you think that this encourages bad behavior and premarital sex?
Well, I'm not sure if I'll say it encourages bad behavior, but I do think that the education system is supposed to educate our children. I don't think that having condoms on the premise for the children to get without parental consent is part of what we're asking them to do. I'm not naive enough to believe that all children will wait until they're married to have condoms, but I do believe that's a conversation that needs to take place between the children and their parents or their guardians. I just think it's a little much for the school to just put the machine in there and say, have at it. I'm not comfortable with that.
But if parents are doing their jobs and parents are making their kids understand the value of waiting to have sex, then the kids won't get the condoms anyway, right? I mean, do you think there's a kid who doesn't, do you all really believe this, that there's a kid who isn't having sex or doesn't want to have sex, and then they see that Trojan, or if it's, in my neighborhood, a Magnum, and they decide, you know what, I will have sex?
I just think that the ready availability might, I'm not saying that the child will just, okay, I see condoms, I have to have sex now. I just have a fundamental problem with the education system putting that machine in the schools. I think that that's kind of stepping out of their realm of responsibility.
Yeah, all right, y'all are confusing me, and I'm not trying to be contentious, but you're confusing me here. It's not a sex machine, it's a condom machine. The school isn't telling kids to have sex or not to have sex. It's simply providing condoms for students who might be having sex or considering having sex. That doesn't impede on parents' right to teach their kids to have sex or not have sex. Unless you're saying that the condom has a persuasive power to make kids who are not going to have sex suddenly have sex, then I don't see how this affects a parent's ability to teach their child about sexuality and when to have sex and when to wait and all of the other stuff. Chad, what do you say?
Yeah, there's a fundamental value that's being stated when you put condom machines on the wall of a high school bathroom. And that statement is, we expect you to be sexually active. And there's this myth as well that sex outside of marriage can be safe.
Can be what?
I can't tell you the number of students I've talked to.
I didn't hear you, Chad. You said there's a myth that sex out of marriage can be what?
Safe.
Why can't it be?
I don't think the school should be encouraging the message that sex outside of marriage can be safe. I've talked to a number of gynecologist doctors and teenagers who have gotten pregnant because of failure of condoms, and as you know too, teenagers don't use condoms or birth control as regularly as, say, married adults would who are planning a certain time for their pregnancy or whatever. And it's just, it is devastating to people's lives, and females carry a disproportionate burden of sexual activity outside of marriage, the guy walks away, but the female is the one who gets pregnant. She carries a higher degree of the STIs passed on and all that. And condoms do not prevent all STIs. They're only partially effective against HIV/AIDS, and they're not very effective at all against HPV. So to tell kids that sex can be safe outside of marriage, I think it's like handing.
Question: Chad, what makes sex within marriage? So let's say, for example, Chad, that you and I have sex, right? And we're not married, so it's unsafe by your definition. If we were to go to New Hampshire and get married, would the sex suddenly become safer?
Well, if we're talking about sex between a man and a woman, then at least if the lady becomes pregnant, that child is born into a family. If a young lady has sex outside of marriage, the guy usually walks off because you know what? He doesn't want to deal with the responsibility of having a son.
So you're talking about. So you're not suggesting that sex within marriage is and I said the marriage between you and me just because I figured that would make you uncomfortable and I thought it'd be funny.
Yeah,
but
it did make me a little uncomfortable.
That says a lot. But I guess the point for me is there's nothing about marriage that makes it medically or scientifically safer. In fact, one of the great myths about marriage, and this you see this in sub-Saharan Africa, is that all these people stop wearing condoms when they get married because people kept telling them, we don't want to. In fact, let me be clear. One of the things that happened in sub-Saharan Africa is they were pushing an abstinence until marriage agenda, and they were pushing no condoms because they thought it sent the wrong message. And then people got married, and because the age rate in some countries is up to 50 to 55%, people were getting AIDS in marriage because they weren't wearing condoms in marriage, because somehow we had this idea that condoms themselves marked immorality, being unethical, and somehow a sign of unsafety. And so I'm not sure that we should think of marriage as a sort of medical silver bullet. That can be kind of dangerous too. But I'll give you a chance to come back on that. But I want to bring Patrick back in because he might be the lone person here who's on this.
Thank you, Mark, for bringing me back in. Oh, there's so much here. I want to go back and, talk about comprehensive sexuality for a little bit. It does not replace the conversation between parents and their children at all. In fact, it encourages it. Sexuality education really begins at home, and parents should instill those values in their children when it comes to making choices around sex and being safe. As far as condom machines in schools, I mean, the message that I think we think it's sending is that we want you to be responsible. We want you to be safe. Sexual thoughts, sexual feelings, a natural part of adolescent development. Once you hit puberty, you're having those thoughts and feelings. Some of the numbers even suggest that 50% of teens are already sexually active, and 2/3 of these teens may have had sex before their senior year of high school. So the teens are having sex. The message that should be sent is that we want you to protect yourself. Condoms are very effective in reducing pregnancies, reducing HIV infection, and reducing other STIs. It's a fact.
That's an interesting point, gang. What do you all say to this? And I'll go to you, Mona and Joni. There are a lot of numbers that suggest that high school students are having sex. What do we do about the practical reality that, if you have like 60% in some areas, sometimes 80% of boys saying they're having sex, then what do we do with that? I mean, do we factor that in the fact that it's not as if there's a small population of people who are having sex and we're suddenly throwing condoms to the entire flock, right? More kids are having sex than not.
Yes, no, that is true. And we're not sticking our heads in the sand and ignoring that's what's occurring. But what we're saying is that if you're going to provide condoms, one, you should notify parents and let us opt into it. And two, there should also be comprehensive sexual education that goes along with it, because condoms do not protect you 100%. And we want our children to be responsible. And yes, the onus is on the parents to parent the child, not to be your child's friend, but to parent your child.
But let me ask you a question though. If more people are having sex than not having sex, right? Let's just concede that statistical point for a moment. Let's say I'm right. Why should we err on the side of the minority and not the majority when there's so many high stakes attached to public health?
Well, no matter what, we are still the parents, and no one has the right to circumvent our authority on the parents. And parents need to be held accountable and responsible. When the public and school districts and the government is now taking over parenting our children, then that's a violation of our rights as parents. They're our children, they're our responsibility. And if a child becomes pregnant, that child will be our responsibility. So you cannot cut us out of this equation.
So is
and that's
just,
what's happening.
So is this just an ideological sticking? I mean, in practice, the only difference between opting out and opting in is who gets to fill out the permission slip. You don't have a problem with condoms in school. You're just saying that the people who should be sitting in the note are the people who want the condoms and not the people who don't want the condoms.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Would you, Joni, would you be okay with that? Would you be okay if we put the condom dispenser on the wall and only the parents who want their kids to have the condoms could get access to them because they'd have to write a letter in?
Well, I guess I could be okay with that, but I mean, I just find it interesting that we want to put the condom machine and let the child make a responsible adult decision, but in all other aspects in the school, the parent does need to sign a permission slip to do this. If the kid is absent, write a note to let them back in school. All of these things, they're coming to the parents for permission or for you to acknowledge that you know something has happened or is happening. But for this thing, we're just going to put that in there. So
I disagree. What about tampons? I mean, when I was in high school.
See, the thing is that a tampon and a condom are that's two ends of a pole.
I learned that the hard way. I now have a 9-year-old. You're right. But no, what I'm saying is that when a kid goes to a nurse's office and wants a tampon because their period has started, they don't notify parents. They give the kid a tampon. If I need a stitches or I need a Band-Aid, they give it to. What I'm saying is it's a medical and health issue. Parents aren't always notified in schools.
Well, the thing is that most of the time parents have already signed papers at the beginning of the school year that give them permission, that ask you questions just like that. If your child needs a Tylenol, can I give them a Tylenol? So you're asked all these questions at the beginning of the school year of the things that you say I'm okay with doing. And this is something where you're not asked if you're okay with this. This is just put in the school, and that's that. And that's where I have a problem, is that there's you're asking for parental permission for so many things, but you've made the decision that there doesn't have to be any kind of parental consent for this. We're just going to put this in the schools, and I have a problem with that.
Joni, do you have any worry that if we do that, and for example, you wouldn't allow your kid to have to sign up for the condoms, right?
No, I would not. But the other thing is I'm not foolish enough to think that.
I'm sorry, Joni. One second. I just want to follow up on this question. I promise I'll let you finish your thought.
Okay.
Do you have any worry that the kids are going to get condoms anyway, that since this isn't the only game in town for condoms, all we're doing is reducing their chances of being safe?
I guess I would have to give you that point, that this will, for those that are engaging in sexual activities, this is a means of them having safe sex. I will give you that point.
Okay, I've never had that happen before to me. Awesome. Mona, jump on back in.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see any danger from a public and Chad as well, from a public health perspective, in ignoring? And I don't want to say ignoring. I don't want to turn you into a straw man. But do you see any point in not at least acknowledging the public health risk attached to this, in the sense that kids are having sex, kids are getting HIV, they are getting STIs, and that condoms do an enormous job of preventing them? No, they're not foolproof, but they do an enormous job in preventing HIV infection. They do an enormous job in preventing gonorrhea and chlamydia and what else? I mean, they reduce herpes, not fully, but they do a great job with herpes. I mean, why would we not use them if we know kids are having sex?
Again, for me and for many parents, it comes down to circumventing our rights and our authority over our children. If we have to sign a permission slip for every single thing in the school system, why not respect us as parents and engage us, in this discussion? And that's the problem. We are being completely sidelined and isolated, and it's our children. We're not objecting. We know what's going on. But we're saying, okay, fine, so you're going to do that. Are you going to have a comprehensive sexual education? what happens if the child becomes pregnant? So, what we're saying is enough with keeping us out, enough with circumventing our rights. Let us parent our children and let's do it together.
Fair enough.
There is no input from parents on this.
We have Maddie Philly writing in, and Maddie says, in PA, 14 years and older can seek sexual health services without parental consent. Why should receiving condoms require consent when treatment for an STD does not? What do you say to that, Chad?
You know what? Again, I support both of these moms. I share their view, and that's what we represent at Focus too, is supporting the parents. These kids are minors, and the parent needs to know what's going on with their kids. And you know what? And let me just add a correction in here. The majority of kids in high schools, according to the YRBS survey, which is done by the CDC, are not sexually active or not having sex. Okay, that's another myth that's been promoted there. Why not capitalize on this momentum? The school needs to be focusing on the virtues, on the character of that child, and on their academic performance. And again, they should not be undermining parents by saying on the walls of the public restrooms, we're really no different than a truck stop, and we expect you to act.
I think it's a bit much to say it's like a truck stop.
Stop. Disagree with that.
Saying that, and they're not handing, and another myth is that they're not handing out condoms, right? They're simply saying that if you want access to condoms, you can have them. You don't have to buy them. You don't have to go down to the local Planned Parenthood. You don't have to go across town to get them. You can just get them at school, since they spend most of their time in school.
I agree with that. I think that, ideally, realistically, not all parents are involved. Not all parents are having these conversations with their children. From an educator standpoint, condoms are a resource. We're going to look at it as a resource. Mark, you're right. No one is handing condoms out in goodie bag. No one is stashing it in backpack. This is an opportunity for sexually active teens or teens who want to become sexually active and be safe and be responsible to access those resources. This is a public health situation. This is a crisis. The incident of teen pregnancy, STIs and HIV among teens are at a teen pregnancy is dropping a little bit, but STIs and HIV rates are increasing among teens.
Chad, let me ask you another question. Chad, are you against comprehensive sex ed reform, or do you support only abstinence-only education?
I support sexual risk avoidance, which would be the equivalent of abstinence education, and that's what I believe the standard should be for schools. And if a parent knows their kid is out there having sex, then that's up to that parent to get them birth control or condoms, but that's not the school's responsibility.
You think the school should be talking about how risky sex is and telling them to wait until marriage as an educational position?
I think so. Yeah, I think their expectation should be that you wait until you're in a stable, committed marriage before you have sex. When sex is taken out of the context of marriage, that's when we start seeing 2 out of every 5 babies born to unwed moms.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. You're saying that just so I'm clear, you just said we start to see babies born out of wedlock when people stop having babies in marriage.
Well, if you're having sex outside of marriage, that's the only way you're going to have children outside of marriage.
Well, that's my point.
Okay,
it's an axiomatic point. That's my point. It seemed like an axiomatic argument. You're saying, like, we keep seeing all these out of wedlock births because people are having sex outside of marriage. Well, yeah, of course. The question isn't that. I mean, that's self-evident. The question is whether or not we're okay with that, and whether or not that's a problem, whether we're creating a moral sort of issue around this that we may not have. I mean, do we want to concede that having sex outside of marriage is a bad thing? That people having a stable, loving relationship and having sex is okay? Chad, it may be that you just might want to jump off.
Right, and from our perspective, we're a Christian ministry, and we take a world view from the Bible. And in the Bible, it talks about fornication, which is sex outside of marriage, which it views as sin. So we view that as wrong. We view sex outside of marriage as a bad thing, and sex within marriage is meant for three things. That's to bond the husband to the wife, for the pleasure of the husband and the wife, and for procreation. And when you take procreation and bonding out into the non-marital realm, here we have children being born to single moms who are most likely going to remain in poverty, and that child's going to grow up without the benefit of a dad, without the benefit of a family. And we have a lot of statistics saying that child does not receive the opportunities that he or she would have if they were in a stable, committed marriage.
Wow, Chad, I think you just lost Mona. I think you just lost Mona. I think you lost the HuffPost community about an hour ago, but I think you lost Mona a while back. This is a conversation we have to have another time, because I think you've raised like 7 issues that we need to unpack fully, and we'll do that a bit later. But I want to thank you all for joining this conversation and making it so interesting. Joni on the phone, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
We love when people see our Green Room postings and decide that they don't just want to weigh in the comment well, but they want to click that red button to be an on-air guest, and they actually join the conversation. So we want you to do that again and again, and next time we want to see your actual face in the Google Hangout, so make sure you do that for us.